The Antichrist, could it be Emmanuel Macron or Donald Trump? The Antichrist's profile according to the Bible. The Bible describes the Antichrist as a powerful leader who will emerge in the last days to deceive humanity and oppose God. His mission will be to bring a false peace to the world, consolidating his power before revealing his true nature. Characteristics of the Antichrist. 1. A deceptive and charismatic leader. Revelation 13 verses 5 to 7 speaks of a ruler who will have great eloquence and authority, deceiving nations. He will be seen as a crisis solver, gaining the support of governments and populations. 2. Opponent of God and persecutor of Christians. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 4 says he will exalt himself above God and seek to be worshipped. He will impose a system that persecutes those who remain faithful to Christ. 3. Creator of a total control system. Revelation 13 verses 16 to 17 mentions the mark of the beast, without which no one will be able to buy or sell. This suggests absolute economic control, possibly through advanced technology. 4. False peace before tyranny. Daniel 9 verse 27 speaks of a peace agreement the Antichrist will make but later break, starting a period of great tribulation. Initially, he will appear as a peacemaker but will soon show his true nature. According to the Bible, the Antichrist will be a global leader, admired and followed by many, but who will bring both spiritual and physical destruction to the world. Emmanuel Macron, a prepared leader? Many conspiracy theorists have speculated about Emmanuel Macron's role on the world stage, pointing out characteristics that could align with the biblical description of the Antichrist. While this remains speculation, some intriguing aspects of his political rise and globalist vision raise questions. 1. The meaning of the name Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us, a title associated with Jesus Christ, Matthew 1 verse 23. This could be interpreted as a prophetic irony, where a leader bearing this name might present himself as a savior of the world but, in reality, play the opposite role. 2. Rapid and mysterious political rise. Before becoming France's president, Macron was relatively unknown in politics. He became president at the age of 39, one of the youngest leaders in France's history, without traditional party backing. His meteoric rise was supported by major banks and global elites, raising suspicions about a greater plan to place him in power. 3. Macron and the European Union, a step toward a global government. Macron is a strong advocate for centralizing power in the European Union, promoting greater control over member nations. In speeches, he has defended the creation of a European army, which could be the foundation of a future global military force. The Bible suggests that the Antichrist will rule over a unified empire, Daniel 7 verses 23 to 24, and the European Union could be a step in that direction. 4. His secular vision and opposition to Christianity. Macron promotes a secular Europe, where religion plays a diminishing role in society. Under his government, measures against churches and Christian symbols have been reinforced in France. If the Antichrist is someone who directly opposes God and the Christian faith, 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 4, Macron's stance could be seen as an indication of this agenda. Although there is no concrete evidence that Macron is the Antichrist, his rapid rise, support for globalism, and stance on religion raise interesting questions for those studying biblical prophecies and conspiracy theories. The President of the United States, the commander of the New World Order? If the Antichrist is a global leader who will control the world's economy and politics, the President of the United States is one of the top candidates for the role. As the leader of the world's largest military and economic power, he has enough influence to impose a global control system, similar to what is described in the Bible. 1. The power of the United States on the global stage. The U.S. is the world's leading military superpower, with bases in multiple countries, allowing direct influence over nations worldwide. Its economy dictates global trade rules, and the U.S. dollar remains the primary global reserve currency. American leadership within the UN and NATO gives the U.S. president unprecedented power in international politics. 2. The use of technology for global control. Revelation 13 verses 16 to 17 speaks of a system in which no one can buy or sell without the mark of the beast, suggesting absolute economic control. In the U.S., advances in artificial intelligence, digital surveillance, and digital currencies could facilitate the creation of a global monitoring system. If a U.S. president promotes replacing physical money with a centralized digital currency, he could control all financial transactions on the planet. 3. A totalitarian government disguised as democracy. Over the years, U.S. presidents have expanded government power through mass surveillance, restrictions on freedoms, and media control. In times of crisis, authoritarian measures have been implemented under the pretext of national security, such as the Patriot Act after September 11th. If a charismatic leader were to rise to power, he could use crises as an excuse to impose a global authoritarian regime before the population realizes it. 4. The U.S. president as a false savior. According to the Bible, the Antichrist will bring a false peace before revealing himself as a tyrant, Daniel 9 verse 27. The U.S. president is often seen as the leader of the free world, capable of mediating international conflicts and offering solutions to global crises. If a future U.S. president emerged as a savior, uniting nations under a new world order, he could deceive humanity, leading to the fulfillment of biblical prophecies. Although we cannot say with certainty that a U.S. president is the Antichrist, his strategic position and unprecedented power make this possibility intriguing. If an American leader decided to implement a global control system, he could fit the prophetic profile described in the scriptures. The Macron-U.S. Alliance for Global Control. If the Antichrist is a world leader who will govern through a unified system of power, he will not act alone. He will need strategic allies to consolidate his authority. What if Emmanuel Macron and the President of the United States were working together to establish a new world order? 1. Union between Europe and the U.S., the foundation for a global government. The Bible suggests that the Antichrist will rule an empire composed of multiple nations, Daniel 7 verses 23 to 24. The European Union and the United States are the two most powerful political and economic forces in the West. Macron has positioned himself as Europe's most influential leader, while the U.S. remains the world's largest military and financial superpower. An alliance between the two could create a power bloc capable of controlling the world. 2. The creation of a global digital currency. Revelation 13 verses 16 to 17 speaks of the mark of the beast, without which no one can buy or sell. Both Macron and U.S. leaders have discussed the implementation of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which could replace physical money and enable tracking of all transactions. If they work together to introduce a global digital financial system, they could exert total control over the world economy. 3. Using crises to justify the New World Order. Throughout history, major crises have been used to justify radical changes in society. Wars, pandemics, and economic collapses can be used as excuses to impose a new global system. If Macron and the U.S. president collaborated, they could use a catastrophic event to convince the world that a unified government is the only solution to ensure peace and stability. 4. A global government disguised as peace and security. The Antichrist will be seen as a peacemaker before revealing his true nature, Daniel 9 verse 27. Macron has already suggested creating a European army, which could expand into a global military force under the pretext of ensuring peace. The U.S. president could help integrate this system with NATO and other military alliances. Together, they could establish a world government, initially disguised as a simple alliance for security and economic cooperation. If this alliance materialized, Macron could be the political and diplomatic figure, while the U.S. president would provide military and technological power. This combination would be enough to impose a new global order, fitting the prophetic description of the Antichrist's rule. The role of global crises in consolidating power. Throughout history, major political and social changes have been justified by crises. If the Antichrist needs a reason to consolidate his power, he could use global chaos as an excuse to impose his authority. Emmanuel Macron and the President of the United States could use global crises to convince humanity that a centralized government is the only solution. 1. Wars and international conflicts. The Bible speaks of wars and rumors of wars as signs of the end times, Matthew 24 verse 6. The world is already experiencing tensions between major powers, such as the US, Russia, and China, as well as conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine. If a large-scale war were to occur, Macron and the US president could present themselves as peace mediators, unifying nations under a global government. This world government could begin as a peace treaty but would soon turn into an absolute control regime. 2. Economic collapse and global financial crisis. Revelation 13 verses 16 to 17 states that no one will be able to buy or sell without the mark of the beast, indicating total financial control. The world is already facing economic crises, inflation, and risks of banking collapses. A global financial crisis could be used as a pretext to replace physical money with a global digital currency, controlled by a central government. Macron and the US president, with support from banks and international organizations, could lead this transition, eliminating cash and making a digital identification system mandatory. 3. Pandemics and health control. Recent pandemics have shown how governments can impose global restrictions in the name of public health. Macron and the US president could support the creation of a global health passport system, which could later evolve into a mandatory digital identification system. This system could be integrated with financial transactions, travel monitoring, and even restrictions for those who do not comply with the global government's rules. 4. Climate change as a justification for global control. The climate agenda has been used to justify global policies that increase government control over the economy and people's lifestyles. Macron has declared support for stricter measures against companies and citizens who do not follow environmental regulations. If a major climate crisis occurs, such as extreme natural disasters or environmental collapse, leaders like Macron and the US president could impose restrictive laws limiting individual freedoms, including energy consumption, travel, and even food choices. In summary, global crises, whether wars, financial collapses, pandemics, or environmental disasters, could be used to convince people that a strong world government is necessary. Macron and the US president could present themselves as the only leaders capable of solving these problems, consolidating a total control system aligned with the biblical description of the Antichrist's rule. False peace and the rise of total control. The Antichrist will not rise to power through immediate force, but rather through persuasion and deception. The Bible indicates that he will emerge as a peacemaker, offering solutions to the world's problems before revealing his true nature, Daniel 9 verse 27. Macron and the US president could use this strategy to consolidate a global government disguised as peace and security. 1. False peace as a strategy for domination. In Daniel 9 verse 27, the Antichrist makes a peace covenant for 7 years, but breaks it halfway, initiating a great tribulation. Leaders like Macron and the US president could negotiate international treaties to end conflicts and stabilize the economy. This supposed peace could be used to convince the world that a strong global government is necessary to prevent future crises. However, this peace would be temporary, just a means to centralize power before imposing a totalitarian regime. 2. Consolidation of a one-world government. Macron already advocates for a more unified European state, and many leaders speak about the need for global governance. If the Antichrist is a Western leader, he could first unify Europe and then expand his dominion to other nations. An international peace treaty could be the first step toward creating a one-world government, where political, economic, and military decisions are centralized in the hands of a few. 3. Total control disguised as security. Revelation 13 verse 7 says that the Antichrist will have authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. This suggests a global control system disguised as an international alliance for the common good. Measures to enforce this supposed peace could include real-time digital monitoring of citizens, control of social media and information to prevent disinformation, restrictions on travel and commerce for those who do not comply with the new system. The ultimate goal would be to create a society where everyone depends on the global government to live, eliminating any resistance to the new system. 4. Persecution of opponents. Once the Antichrist consolidates his government, he will begin to persecute those who do not submit to the system. Christians and other religious groups who refuse to accept the new rules will be marginalized or punished. The government could use artificial intelligence, total surveillance, and digital currencies to restrict the freedom of those who do not conform. This false peace will only be a means to implement an absolute control regime, paving the way for the full revelation of the Antichrist and his persecution of those who refuse to follow him. The Mark of the Beast and Digital Control. The Mark of the Beast is one of the most well-known symbols associated with the Antichrist, as described in Revelation 13 verses 16 to 17. The Bible speaks of a system where no one will be able to buy or sell without this mark, suggesting absolute control over economic activities. This concept could be realized through digital technologies such as central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and biometric identification, giving the global government unprecedented power over its citizens. 1. The Mark of the Beast, Meaning and Implementation. Revelation 13 verses 16 to 17 describes the Mark of the Beast as something that will be imposed on the right hand or forehead, without which no one can buy or sell. This mark could be seen as a digital identification technology, such as microchips or biometric devices, connecting people to a centralized control system. In recent years, technologies like biometrics, fingerprint scanning, facial recognition, and digital currencies have become increasingly common, creating the perfect infrastructure for global control. The Antichrist, with the help of allies like Macron and the US president, could implement this technology as a security guarantee, forcing everyone to submit to the system. 2. Financial control and power centralization. The Bible indicates that the mark will not just be a means of identification, but also an economic control mechanism. The implementation of a global digital currency, controlled by a central authority, could completely replace physical money and traditional banking transactions. Governments worldwide could follow the leadership of Macron and the US president in implementing a centralized financial system where all aspects of economic and commercial life would be tracked and monitored. With the Mark of the Beast linked to digital currency, the global government could block or restrict access to resources, punishing those who oppose the system. 3. The pretext of security and convenience. The adoption of monitoring and financial control technologies can be justified by the need to combat crime, fraud, terrorism, and even protect against public health threats, such as pandemics. However, the security pretext is just a facade for total control. The Antichrist will use the promise of security and ease of transactions to deceive the population, leading them to accept the mark without realizing what is truly at stake. Macron, with his vision of a centralized state, and the US president, with his technological influence, could be key figures in introducing this global control infrastructure. 4. Persecution of those who refuse the mark. The Bible also warns that those who refuse to accept the mark of the beast will be persecuted, Revelation 13 verses 15 to 17. Individuals and religious groups, especially Christians, who oppose the system will be marginalized, controlled, or even eliminated. Refusing to adhere to the mark could result in restrictions on access to essential goods and services, such as food, housing, and medical care. With the control system fully integrated into daily life, resisting the Antichrist would become extremely difficult, especially when most of the population is already dependent on the system. The Mark of the Beast thus represents the culmination of absolute control over humanity. With the implementation of digital technologies, governments like Macron's and the US administration could easily establish a system where everyone is monitored and controlled, with refusal leading to isolation and persecution. The final collapse and God's judgment. Although the Antichrist, with the support of powerful figures like Emmanuel Macron and the US president, may successfully consolidate a global government and impose his control, the Bible also gives us a final hope: the collapse of the Antichrist system and the judgment of God. The Antichrist may rule for a time, but his victory will be temporary, and God's judgment is approaching. 1. The final rebellion against God. Revelation 19 verses 19 to 20 describes the Battle of Armageddon, where the Antichrist's forces will gather to fight against Christ. Despite ruling the world for a time, the Antichrist directly opposes the return of Jesus Christ and his vengeance against evil. Those who followed the Antichrist and accepted the mark will be on the wrong side of history, while Christ, with the heavenly army, will come to defeat him definitively. 2. The Antichrist's defeat and final judgment. Revelation 19 verse 20 states that the Antichrist will be captured and thrown into the lake of fire, along with the false prophet and all those who followed his lies. The Antichrist's fall will be swift and final, fulfilling the prophetic judgment of his destruction. 3. The eternal kingdom of Christ. After the Antichrist's defeat, Christ will establish his eternal kingdom on earth. Revelation 21 verses 1 to 4. The Antichrist system will be destroyed, and a new, just government ruled by Jesus Christ will be established forever. Even though the Antichrist may deceive many, the Bible assures us that Jesus Christ will ultimately triumph. Revelation 17 verse 14.